All right. Hello and welcome to our next scene in our reading and analysis of William Shakespeare's Macbeth. Today we are in Act 3, Scene 4, which starts off a pretty big scene. We've had a major event. Yesterday's scene was short, 3-3, but a big event happens with Banquo's death, and now the fallout of that is of particular interest and a very memorable scene. So let's dive into it. If you remember from yesterday, Banquo was on his way to a banquet, right? Some kind of an easy way to remember. Banquo is going to a banquet when he dies, but Fleance survives because he flees, right? There's a couple tricks if you're studying for a test. But anyway, Banquo is on his way to this banquet when he is murdered. So the Macbeths have to throw this banquet, and specifically Macbeth himself, because Lady Macbeth doesn't know that Banquo has been murdered. But they have to throw this banquet and appear normal, right? And we'll see if they can pull that off. So, scene 4: banquet prepared at Macbeth's castle. Macbeth says to all the lords and generals and everyone in attendance, "You know your own degrees. Sit down. At first and last, the hearty welcome. Thanks, your majesty. Ourself will mingle with society and play the humble host. Our hostess keeps her state, but in best time we will require her welcome." To which Lady Macbeth says, "Pronounce it for me, sir, to all our friends. For my heart speaks, they are welcome." And then banquet is barely started. First murderer comes to the door. So this is someone who was involved in the murder of Banquo, comes to the door to report what has happened. Macbeth says, this is not to the murderer, this is to everyone. "See they encounter thee with their heart's thanks." Well, technically it's to Lady Macbeth. "See they encounter thee with their heart's thanks. Both sides are even. Here I'll sit in the midst. Be large in mirth. Anon will drink a measure the table round." So that's to everyone, right? Basically, have a great time, everyone. He sees the murderer and approaches him in the corner of the stage or somewhere. He says, "There's blood upon thy face. 'Tis Banquo's then. 'Tis better thee without than he within." Is he dispatched? Right? So, "'tis better thee without than he within." The blood is better on the outside of you, murderer, than on the inside of Banquo. And the murderer says, "My lord, his throat is cut. That I did for him. Thou art the best of the cutthroats. Yet he's good that did the like for Fleance. If thou didst it, thou art the non-parallel." Parallel. So, meaning without equal. No one is, parallel lines. No one is equal to you. To which the murderer has to reply, the disappointing news for Macbeth: "Most royal sir, Fleance is scaped." Now Macbeth has an aside. Some productions play at him talking to the murderer. But in the original script, this is just to himself and the audience. He says, "Then comes my fit again. I had else been perfect, whole as the marble, founded as the rock, as broad and general as the casing air. But now I am cabined, cribbed, confined, bound to saucy doubts and fears." So you get these two long lists. And the first set of items in that list is that had Fleance also died, everything would have been perfect. There would have been nothing that could have touched Macbeth, because the part of the prophecy that bothered him, Fleance becoming king, or Banquo's sons at least becoming king one day, that would have been wiped out. But because it wasn't, he's cabin confined, cribbed, bound to saucy doubts and fears, right? He can't escape his fears. He can't escape that part of the prophecy that's hanging over him, that someone's going to take this throne from him. But then back to the murder, he says, "But Banquo's safe." So it's interesting. Macbeth says Banquo's dispatched, Banquo's safe, right? He's using euphemisms here. And whether that's because he doesn't want to be overheard by the other guests or his wife who doesn't know what's coming on, or he can't bring himself to fully explain it, or maybe both. That's for the actor or the reader to decide. "Aye, my good lord, safe in a ditch he bides, with 20 trenched gashes on his head, the least a death to nature." Thanks for that. "There the grown serpent lies, the worm that's fled hath nature that in time will venom breed, no teeth for the present." So that metaphor would be Banquo is dead in a ditch. That's the grown serpent, right? The most dangerous of the two. The worm, now I know biologists that worms and serpents are not the same species, right? But you can think of a worm like a little snake. You can see why they would make this connection. The worm is Fleance, and the worm is fled, and it has no teeth for the present, right? So okay, Fleance lived, he survived. Macbeth's not thrilled about that, but he's not worried about it. A 10-year-old or however old Fleance is taking the throne from him. He's not worried about him raising an army and attacking him or trying to revenge what's happened. At least for the time being, he is safe, right? Macbeth is safe. Get thee gone. Tomorrow we'll hear ourselves again. Murderer exits. Now Lady Macbeth calls to her husband and says, "My royal lord, you do not give the cheer. The feast is sold that is not often vouched. Well, 'tis a making, 'tis given with welcome. To feed we're best at home. From thence the sauce to meat is ceremony. Meeting we're brave without it." Basically, let's start dinner. Let's start this whole thing off. Can you stop meeting with that creepy guy in the corner with blood on his face and actually, kick this thing off? And then we get some of the most interesting stage direction in the entire play. It says, "Enter the ghost of Banquo and sits in Macbeth's place." Macbeth to Lady Macbeth says, "Sweet remembrancer. Now, good digestion wait on appetite and health on both." Lennox says, may it please your highness, sit. Here had we now our country's honor roofed, were the graced person of our Banquo present, who may I rather challenge for unkindness than pity for mischance. To which Ross says, he's like, I just wish Banquo was here, but I suppose he's, a little unkind for not being here. And Ross says, his absence, sir, lays blame upon his promise, being like, yeah, he should be here. You're right. But please it, your highness, to grace us with your royal company. Macbeth says, the table's full. Here is a place reserved, sir. Where? Here, my good lord. What is it that moves your highness? So this is really clever staging. And when I teach this scene in the classroom, a little bit before this, I will just look at an empty chair on the side of the room that I've set up, and I'll start like telling it to put its phone away and telling it like it needs to like pay attention and seriously listen. And I'll just move on with the lesson and then go back and do it again. It's one of the fun things about having a little bit of acting experience is getting to use it as a teacher. Teachers are actors. All teachers are actors, whether they realize it or not. And the students, get a little freaked out by it. By the second time I address this empty chair, they are really freaked out, as I would be if someone was talking to an empty chair in a room, right? It's very unnerving and disturbing. And the reason I do this is to give them a sense of what the characters in this scene are feeling when Macbeth is saying what he is saying. Because when he says, when Lennox says, what is it that moves your highness? He is responding to Macbeth's reaction. Macbeth hasn't even said anything yet, but his reaction shows that he realizes who is in that chair. At first, he just sees a bunch of chairs and they're all full. And then he realizes who's in the chair that they all want him to sit in. And it's the ghost of Banquo. So no one in this scene can see the ghost of Banquo except Macbeth. So all of a sudden he says to them, which of you has done this? What, my good lord? Macbeth now to the ghost, to the empty chair, says, thou canst not say I did it. Never shake thy gory locks at me. Meaning like, oh, you can't say I killed Banquo. Don't shake your head at me. Oh, excuse me. And the ghost of Banquo is usually, gory locks, right? He has 20 mortal gashes on his body. So usually this ghost is reflecting those wounds, right? Dried blood in the hair and wounds all over the face and cuts. And the makeup department has a blast, I'm sure. Ross says, gentlemen, rise, his highness is not well. And of course, Lady Macbeth, who's always keeping everything together, says, sit, worthy friends, my lord is often thus and hath been from his youth. Pray you, keep seat. The fit is momentary. Upon a thought he will again be well. If much you note him, you shall offend him and extend his passion. Feed and regard him not. Right, so she's really doing her best to cover here. and she doesn't necessarily realize what's going on. There's some productions that play Lady Macbeth as being able to see the ghost too, or hint that maybe she can see the ghost. But I kind of like it just being Macbeth, right? And I think that's what the script is implying here, that just Macbeth is seeing this. And what she says to everyone is that, oh, this is something he's done since he was young, right? Just sometimes he has these fits, and like if you just ignore him, it'll go away and everything will be great again soon, right? So the ruler is losing his mind. What an unnerving time to be alive, right? She draws Macbeth aside and says, "Are you a man?" Which is, quite a statement, right? We've talked a lot about Macbeth uses manhood to convince the murderers to kill Banquo. Lady Macbeth uses manhood to convince Macbeth to kill Duncan. Lots of talk of what it means to be a man in this play, and usually that is used to corrupt people, which those of you kind of well versed in internet culture can probably find some modern parallels to men that hijack insecurities about manhood to corrupt people and gain influence with them. Anyway, she says, "Are you a man? I, and a bold one that dare look on that which might appall the devil." So he's like, "Yeah, I'm a man, right? I'm staring this ghost in the face." She says, "Oh, proper stuff. This is the very painting of your fear. This is the air-drawn dagger which you said led you to Duncan. Oh, these flaws and starts and postures to true fear would well become a woman's story at a winter's fire authorized by her grandam." So she's comparing this to the air-drawn dagger. Like Macbeth off stage has told her about the "is this a dagger I see before me" scene. And she's like, "This was all in your head," right? And she has proof of this, right? We've seen proof of this in 2-2, where he's talking about hearing amen, and someone said, "Macbeth doth murder sleep," and all this. And she's like, "You're just hearing this in your head," right? She knows her husband is maybe losing his mind. And she says that this is basically an old wives' tale, or like a story that would scare a child. "Shame itself, why do you make such faces? When all's done, you look but on a stool." And Macbeth ignores her and says, or tries to convince her that there is something there. He says, "Prithee, see there, behold, look." And then to the ghost, "Lo, how say you?" "Why, what care I if thou canst nod? Speak too. If carnal houses and our graves must send those that we bury back, our monuments shall be the maws of kites." And then the ghost exits. So the ghost responds to Macbeth by nodding. The line tells us that, but the ghost doesn't say anything to Macbeth. And when he challenges it a little bit more, it disappears. And then Lady Macbeth says, "What quite unmanned in folly. If I stand here, I saw him. Fie for shame." And he goes on, trying to convince her of what he's seen and explain it. He says, "Blood hath been shed ere now in the olden time, ere human statute purged the gentle wheel. Aye, and since 2 murders have been performed, too terrible for the ear." So he's talking about, people have killed one another, but he's trying to rationalize this. He's saying people have killed each other before. Murders have happened before. The time has been that when the brains were out, the man would die and there an end. But now they rise again with 20 mortal murders on their crowns and push us from our stools. Right? We get very monosyllabic words in there with 20. I mean, mortal and murders has 2, but and 20. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. But at the end of that line, right, with 20 mortal murders on their crowns and push us from our stools, this is more strange than such a murder is. It's a lot of monosyllables, not all, but a lot, which helps an actor with pace, right? When it's a little easier to pronounce because they're shorter words. You can go faster with us, or faster with it, which shows the unhinged nature of these lines. And basically saying, you used to be, I lost my page. He's basically saying, you used to be able to kill someone and they would be dead, but now they rise again and push us out of our seats. It's like, oh, back in my day, you used to be able to just count a person dead when they died. When their brains were out, the man was dead, and that was the end of it. But now they're coming back, and Macbeth has not caught on that he's the only one seeing this. Lady Macbeth says, "My worthy lord, your noble friends do lack you." I do forget. "Do not muse at me, my most worthy friends. I have a strange infirmity, which is nothing to those that know me. Come, love and health to all, then I'll sit down. Give me some wine, fill full." So he's like, just weird. Yeah, strange things. Sorry, I'm good. Let's all sit down, have fun. I'm going to drink a lot of wine. It's been a day. And the party starts back up again. But while the party is starting back up, the ghost enters. Macbeth hasn't seen it yet. He says, "I drink to the general joy of the whole table and to our dear friend Banquo, whom we miss. Would he were here. To all and him we thirst, and all to all." And everyone says, "Our duties and our pledge," right? So he toasts to Banquo. What an obscene thing to do. Really testing fate here. Toasting to the person that he's just had murdered. But of course, the ghost returns. They raise their drinking cups, and then Macbeth sees the ghost. He says, "Avaunt and quit my sight. Let the earth hide thee. Thy bones are marrowless. Thy blood is cold. Thou hast no speculation in those eyes which thou dost glare with." And Lady Macbeth, again trying to cover, says, "Think of this, good peers, but as a thing of custom. 'Tis no other, only it spoils the pleasure of the time." So Lady Macbeth says, it's like a thing, it's a custom, right? It's like a game, but it's kind of ruining everything. Maybe you should stop, honey. But Macbeth challenges the ghost here. Macbeth's a lot of things, but he is at least rather, brave. Because here he thinks he's going to have to fight the ghost. He says, "What man dare I dare? Approach thou like the rugged Russian bear, the armed rhinoceros, or the Hyrcan tiger. Take any shape but that, and my firm nerves shall never tremble. Or be alive again, and dare me to the desert with my sword. If trembling I inhibit, then protest me the baby of a girl. Hence, horrible shadow, unreal mockery, hence." And the ghost exits. So he says, take any shape other than Banquo, and I'll fight you. You could be a rhino, a tiger, a bear. I'll fight you. Or be alive again, and you and I can duke it out. And if then I tremble, protest me the baby of a girl. Right? Again, we see manhood and gender being used to prove one's abilities. And that's very interesting. Those of you who know the end of the play know why this is very interesting. But the idea of the baby of a girl, aren't all people the baby of a girl, right? Women have continued the human race through birth. But here it's used as an insult, right? When Macbeth agrees to the murder with Lady Macbeth, he says to her, "Bring forth men children only, for thy metal should compose nothing but males." So there's this idea of like in the next generation in birth, like being born of a soft or a gentle woman even is an insult. You have to be born tough. You have to be tough from the moment you are born. And it's a tough world that Macbeth and Shakespeare inhibit here. But Shakespeare is not endorsing this view of masculinity, if you couldn't tell by now. Anyway, the ghost exits and he says, "Why? So being gone, I am a man again." Then to everyone, "Pray you, sit still." Lady Macbeth says, "You have displaced the mirth, broke the good meeting with most admired disorder." And this is the lie. I love this part of this, like my favorite part of the whole scene. When he says, "Can such things be and overcome us like a summer's cloud? Without our special wonder, you make me strange even to the disposition that I owe, when now I think that you can behold such sights and keep the natural ruby of your cheeks when mine is blanched with fear." So he's like, how can you even look at, I mean, this is strange that you can even look at this and not be terrified. It scares me, and I'm like the toughest guy ever. And Ross says, "What sights, my lord?" Which is when it clicks with Macbeth, finally, that no one else has seen this ghost. No one. Just him. And that is such a because it's one thing to be haunted, right? It's one thing for a ghost or a spirit or whatever to be haunting you in a room full of people. It would be terrifying, I assume. But then isn't it even more terrifying when you realize you're the only one seeing it? No one else is seeing this thing, just you. You're in your own private horror movie, and no one else even believes what's happening. Which does bring the question, is this in Macbeth's head, or is it real? Is it supernatural, or is it psychological? A lot of directors lean toward the psychological. There's been productions where Banquo, the actor playing Banquo, does not come back out dressed as a bloody ghost. It's just Macbeth screaming at the chair. You don't get the reveal, right? That's not what the script says. The script says a ghost comes out, not that it's all in Macbeth's head. But it is all in Macbeth's head. So I think there's justification in playing it that way of no Banquo actor. I think it'd be a little confusing for the audience, but it's kind of confusing for all the characters on stage too. I kind of really like both approaches. Maybe if I was directing this, I would have the actor come out, and then one rehearsal, I would have the actor not come out, and just see if they could do it without the actor and surprise who's playing Macbeth. Right, that might be some good inspiration there. I don't know. It's a fascinating take. Right, there is no dangling dagger in "Is This a Dagger I See Before Me?" It's all in his head. But does that mean it's supernatural or psychological? That feels more psychological. But here we see a ghost. It feels more supernatural. So you can play these things differently. This is why people love Shakespeare, and why artists and storytellers continue to return to Shakespeare, because you can put your own spin on every single production. Every single production is so different from the other one. There's as many Hamlets as there are actors to play him, as it says, or as the saying goes. So yeah, it's an awesome scene. And I love that line, "What sights, my lord?" Lady Macbeth, again trying to cover, says, "I pray you speak not. He grows worse and worse. Question enrages him. At once, good night. Stand not upon the order of your going, but go at once." And Lennox says, "Good night, and better health attend his majesty." So she says, don't talk to him, go, right? She is trying to keep this as tightly guarded as possible. Get them out of here, and let me deal with it. Because if this gets out that the king is crazy, it's just going to get worse for the Macbeths, right? It has to be a guarded secret. Lady Macbeth says, "A kind good night to all. Everyone but Macbeth and Lady Macbeth exit." And this famous line, which I said, sleep and blood are two very important words in this play. Look at this line. Macbeth says, "It will have blood, they say. Blood will have blood." Right? That is 3 bloods in one line. It will have blood, they say. Blood will have blood. Almost this image of blood bleeding, or blood begetting more blood. Stones have been Stones have been known to move, and trees to speak. Augurs and understood relations have by maggot pies and chows and rooks brought forth the secretest man of blood. Right. So he's talking about this sort of predictions, right? Augurs is predictions, right? Think of in Hamlet when Hamlet says to Horatio, "We defy augury, we defy predictions," is what he means there. It's a more famous line that has this old word in it. So if we look at that again, and I'm kind of unpacking it with you because it's an interesting line. Stones have been known to move and trees to speak. Augurs and understood relations have by magpies and chows and rooks brought forth the secretest man of blood. Right. So like, he is reflecting on the supernaturalness of it. He's reflecting on death and blood and sacrifice being things that people have tried to use to predict the future, right? The oracles, if you think of like the ancient Greek oracles, how they would read the entrails of the birds or whatever pieces of meat the birds would eat or something, right? This connection of the supernatural prediction with blood. And then almost nonchalantly, what is the night? Right? Like same line, what is the night? almost at odds with morning, which is which, says Lady Macbeth. Which almost at odds with morning would mean it's almost morning time, right? So midnight, or maybe even closing in on dawn. So again, middle of the night, right? Like it's late at night and they are not sleeping. They are seeing ghosts. Macbeth is plotting murders and throwing parties, right? There's very little sleep in this play, and the characters reflect on that. Macbeth goes through battle, and instead of going to bed, he stays up and kills Duncan. And then the next day, he's going through all the fallout of that and becoming king, and then going to a new castle or doing kingly duties and throwing, like, it's just very, very little sleep. And we know scientifically, through modern medicine and science, what that does to the brain. And Shakespeare obviously knew it too in here, but we know like chemically what it does to the brain now. But yeah, you see it reflected in Shakespeare's plays, that he understands. He was a writer, so I'm sure he understood lack of sleep. But he understands what lack of sleep can do to you. Now we see what seems to be a bit of a subject change, but it's an important one. Macbeth says, "How sayest thou that Macduff denies his person at our great bidding? Did you send to him, sir?" Right, so we bring up Macduff, and we haven't talked about Macduff for a long time. He is the person who was sent to wake up Duncan. So he's the first one to discover the body. And then he chooses not to go to the coronation. He chooses to go back home to Fife instead of going to the coronation. And dictators notice who is at their ceremonies. They notice who is at their parties and who isn't at their parties, and who is at their inaugurations and who isn't at their inaugurations. And we've seen it all throughout history, and you see it here with Macbeth. He's become suspicious, right? Banquo's dead. This should be like, I'm not saying I would celebrate it because I have moral convictions, but for Macbeth, this should be cause of celebration. But that's not how paranoia works. When you have paranoid dictators, they snuff out one enemy and they just create a new one in their mind. So now Macduff is in the crosshairs. Lady Macbeth says, "Did you send to him, sir? I hear it by the way, but I will send. There's not a one of them, but in his house I keep a servant feed." So there we're told that Macbeth pays the servants in his allies and is in the other thanes, the other higher ups in their houses. He's paying a servant to spy on them. Secret police spy networks also, classic authoritarian moves. "I will tomorrow, and betimes I will, to the weird sisters. More shall they speak, for now I am bent to know by the worst means the worst." So his plan is to go see the witches, right? That's the blood will have blood, they say, and trees have been known to talk, right? Like, I need to see what else the witches know, the predictions that they have. "For mine own good, all causes shall give way. I am in blood, steeped in so far that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as go o'er." That's another famous line. He is steeped in blood so far, right? He's so far in blood that it is just as much work to go back as it is to keep going, right? He can't go back. He has to keep going to get across this river of blood, is the image there, which means he needs to create more bloodshed, he believes. He says, "Strange things I have in head that will to hand, which must be acted ere they may be scanned." So he's got new things he wants to do and create more bloodshed. And Lady Macbeth says, "You lack the season of all nature's sleep. What you need is not new enemies, and not to go see those weird sisters, the witches, and not to like talk about blood and all the supernatural stuff. You need to go to bed. The season of all nature's sleep." Which, not to get too deep in here, but it is a very similar line to what Macbeth says right after he kills Duncan. Let me see if I can find it real quick here. Right after he kills Duncan, he says, Methought I heard a voice cry, sleep no more, Macbeth does murder, sleep, the innocent sleep, sleep that knits up the raveled sleeve of care, the death of each day's life, sore labor's bath, balm of hurt minds, great nature's second course, chief nourisher, and life's feast. You lack the season of all nature's sleep, right? It's a similar thing, right? This beautiful talk of how wonderful sleep is. But Macbeth doesn't believe that anymore. Lady Macbeth says, go to sleep. And he says, come, will to sleep. My strange and self-abuse is the initiate fear that wants hard use. We are yet but young indeed. And isn't that what people say when people tell them they need to get sleep? It's like, oh, I'm young. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Yeah, I'm young. I'll be fine. And Macbeth said, yeah, will to sleep, but what exactly that looks like is not usually played on stage as restful sleep. I want to tell you real quick about a production that I saw with this scene in it, specifically the ending part between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. It was called, oh my gosh, was it Macbeth in Stride? I saw a workshop production in like 2018. It's this brilliant take on Macbeth that's just two actors, at least the workshop was, just Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. And it was set in Motown. So Macbeth was like the guitar player and Lady Macbeth was like the piano player and the singer. And it was infused with these wonderful, like, superstition, wonderful Motown hits. And it was just the Macbeth and Lady Macbeth scenes. That was it. Just the scenes between those two characters. So you really got to focus in on how they start as a couple versus how they end as a couple. And the play ended right here. And the reason this play ended right here is this is the last time Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are on stage together. We're not even done with Act 3, and these two will not be on stage together again in this play. And usually the full productions of this play show an extreme collapse of the marriage. Especially with Lady Macbeth, we see dishevelment, we see bruises, we see someone falling apart. And with Macbeth, it's usually someone who's just becoming more paranoid, more power hungry, more drunk on power and moved by fear as opposed to rational, logical thought. But I find that a fascinating choice because really, they're a good couple. They don't do good things, but they, as a couple, are actually one of Shakespeare's better couples. They're more equitable than most couples. They work together. They just work together towards something terrible, and it destroys their relationship. And I think it's a smart choice on Shakespeare's part to end their on-stage time together right here, with a lot of play still to go. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. As always, I want to talk about our wonderful sponsor, Field Notes. So if you don't know what Blackwing pencils are, for someone who's like a pencil obsessed person such as myself, they're one of the gold standards of pencils. I believe Steinbeck was a big fan of them. The original Blackwing and some famous illustrators have like been buried with their Blackwing. So Field Notes did a collaboration with Blackwing for a colored pencil set that is absolutely gorgeous. It's 12 colored pencils, and these are like beautifully weighted. They are this fine like Japanese cedar. It smells incredible. And they're just amazing. I love Blackwing pencils, one of my favorite types of pencils. And if you're interested in picking up a pair of colored pencils, if you're an illustrator or like to draw or know someone who does, you can get the Blackwing colors, as well as I believe they still have the Field Note coloring book that they did, which is a larger book that's based on famous streetscapes. They've got New York, Miami, Los Angeles, and Chicago, my favorite, because I went to college in Chicago. So they've got some wonderful equipment for people who like to illustrate and color and draw. So if that is something you're interested in, the link and the coupon code down in the description gets you 10% off your first order. Helps support the channel and support a great company. But whether you're interested in that or not, thank you so much for watching. Stick around, subscribe, like, all that stuff so you can see 3-5, which I'll hopefully come out with very soon. Thanks again for watching. Have a good one. I'll see you next time.